The only thing that we're interested in is putting money in your wallet. If you want to bet the fights, if you want to have a little bit of action, you are in the right place. With my partner, Ian Parker, I am Brett Okamoto.
We're ready to rock between our parlays, our props, our straight picks. It's time to make money. Let's go.
Hello everyone and welcome into this edition of UFC Best Bets, and the UFC is definitely back on the road. They are in full swing, international cards. This week it's Paris, France, for the very first time in UFC history, the Octagon touching down in the country of France with a heavyweight main event and with a French heavyweight, Ciryl Gane taking on Tai Tuivasa. Very fun main event. Hello, I am Brett Okamoto alongside Ian Parker to break down this card from a gambling perspective. It feels like forever since I saw you, Ian. I'm not used to these weeks off. We had a rare weekend off last week, but before that, we were in Salt Lake, and you did pretty good at UFC 278.
Yeah, Utah treated us really well. Only one minor blemish with AJ Fletcher, and he almost had it. He just didn't have the gas to get that finish. But we hit the over 1.5 in Tabor Romanov. Marab, not the prettiest win, but we cashed that ticket. Paulo Costa and Rockhold had us sweating, but over 1.5. And the main event, over 4.5, we hit it. So that crazy knockout, that win by Leon Edwards, did not affect us whatsoever. We got to enjoy that. You and I were very surprised when that happened. But hey, 4-1, we'll take that every single week. Let's go.
Oh, absolutely. 4-1 is a good weekend. Real quick, before we get to this this great main card here in Paris, France, what odds would you have given me for a Leon Edwards head kick in the final minute of that fight?
I don't even know what the action could have been possible with that. Maybe plus 10,000 at minimum. Look, when Kamaru Usman, after that first round, we talked about this, that if the fight stayed standing, Leon Edwards can make it competitive. But it went opposite. He wrestled and was doing well. And then Usman turned on the gas rounds 2, 3, and 4, and almost all of 5. And look, kudos to Leon Edwards for just not giving up, not writing himself off. And that coach of his is something special. That head kick was just unbelievable.
I mean, the probability of that has to be insane. I think if you could line up Leon Edwards in the final minute of that fight with everything that had gone on 10,000 times, I'm not sure that he would land that kick again. But what a freaking moment, dude. I can't. That was the last card, and it feels like a lifetime ago since we had that week off. But what a moment from Leon Edwards. So I just wanted to talk about it again real quick. Okay, let's get to this main card, UFC Fight Night in France. Keep in mind, guys, that this is an earlier card. Main card starts at 3 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+, and you can see it right there, 6-fight main card. Lot of fights to talk about. Ian, Ciryl Gane, Tai Tuivasa, a great co-main event. Robert Whittaker, Marvin Vettori. That could have been a main event on a UFC Fight Night, no problem. And then 4 more fights to get to. We will talk about all of these on the main card, and we are going to start with the main event, Ciryl Gane taking on Tai Tuivasa. And look, man, Tai Tuivasa, he's been cashing for you, and he's been cashing for you easily. I mean, you look at the last few of his fights, you know, you had minus 150 against Stefan Struve, minus 125 against Greg Hardy, minus 120 against Augusto Sakai, and he is getting it done so quickly. He's making it look easy. So you love to have money on Tai Tuivasa right now because he's not making you sweat it out. Of course, he beat Derek Lewis as a plus 160 underdog. But here he is as a big time underdog, and you got as much as his momentum as he has. I think you're going to tell me that this is a tough stylistic matchup for him. Do you like him, though, at plus 425 here when he's been on a little bit of a run here?
Look, Tai Tuivasa could be a marketing dream. If he's able to win this fight, get to a title, he's got the personality, he's fun, he takes the sport seriously, but he doesn't take life too seriously. He jokes around, you know, what he said about John Jones recently, but this man standing across the cage from him, he's just so extremely well-rounded. He's so smart. He's very cerebral. He does not get hit. He's defensively sound. And I can go on and on about Ciryl Gane. People are going to come back and be like, oh, but he got out-wrestled by Francis Ngannou. Yes, he did. But Derek Lewis took down Tai Tuivasa just by sneezing on him. Now, whether he was able to hold him down or not is a whole different story. For Tai Tuivasa, the only way to win this fight is to knock out Ciryl Gane, which no one has been able to do. People barely touch him, and I see that fight being very similar here. I also don't know where Tai's cardio truly is. We've seen him in fights get a little tired, and then all of a sudden he's got plan B, which is the same as plan A. He's just able to dig deeper, especially in the fight against Derek Lewis. But he's got to, you know, Ciryl Gane does not rush fights. He does not really feel the need to get that finish right away. He works you down, he processes, and then he really tires you out. I don't know how Tai Tuivasa does past round 3 if it gets there. So for me, I like Ciryl Gane to win this fight. I think he gets it done inside the distance, whether it's by TKO or KO. We're going to get those odds from minus 575 to minus 150. I like Ciryl Gane here. But look, Tai Tuivasa, if you're on his side and you think he's going to win, take it one step further than just plus 425. Make it into a long shot type of bet for yourself, because if he's going to win, it's going to be by KO or TKO, and I believe that pays over plus 600.
Yeah, I think that's good advice there. And when you're taking Gane and you're taking him inside the distance, Gane is a guy that we've seen, he will not press for the finish if he doesn't have to. But I look at Tai, and I've said this before, and I don't think it actually panned out the last time I said this. I think it was when Gane was fighting, maybe it was Rosenstrike, but Tai is a guy who's going to get his money's worth. He's in the main event. He's in Paris. He is going to go after Gane. He's not going to just accept a point decision loss. Is that kind of how you feel about it, and that's why you like Gane inside the distance here, is because of the opponent he's facing?
Yeah, it's a combination. I mean, look, Ciryl Gane, and you pretty much said it right there, right on the money. He doesn't force the finishes, but he's gotten plenty of them because he just knows how to wear his opponents down. He makes smart decisions. And when the finish is there, he goes for it. But Tai doesn't sit back. Tai Tuivasa is bam, bam. He comes in and bam, bam. He's either going to go for the knockout, he goes big, or he goes home. He'll take one to give one, kill or be killed. And in a fight against someone just as smart as Ciryl Gane, I think this time it really plays against him. But I just don't see him winning. I don't see Tai Tuivasa be able to win a 5-round decision against most, especially someone in Gane who can wrestle, who can grapple. We've seen it against other people. I know against Francis Ngannou it wasn't there, but prior to that it was. So that's what I'm basing my play on.
I like it. Okay, so Ciryl Gane inside the distance, but if you like Tai Tuivasa, go ahead and take him a knockout, because that's most likely how he's going to get it done. Let's go to the 185-pound co-main event. Man, Robert Whittaker, he would be the champion if it wasn't for Israel Adesanya. I think he's proven that. 12-2 as a middleweight, and obviously both of those losses coming to the champion, Adesanya. But he's taken on a guy in Vettori who has been very, very good for bettors. I want to say that he's one of those guys who's been a little bit of a darling of the gambling community throughout his career. He's 30 years old, 6-1 in his last 7, and of course his only loss was also to Israel Adesanya. I think Robert Whittaker is one of the best fighters in the world, and I have him in my top 10 pound for pound. Again, he would be the middleweight champ if Israel Adesanya didn't exist. But you're paying for him here. You're paying for him. Minus 230 to take on a guy who's very, very consistent, very well-rounded in Marvin Vettori. How do you see this one?
You know what? I like Robert Whittaker here to get it done by decision. We've seen it time and time again. This is another one similar to Ciryl Gane. He's very high IQ. He's very cerebral. He's got a plan. He's methodical. He doesn't force anything. He also doesn't make bad decisions. Marvin Vettori is extremely durable, doesn't get finished. And he is someone who I think is good, but he's not great anywhere specific. If he's going to try to win this fight against Whittaker, he might have to try to wrestle him. But Whittaker's the better wrestler. I think Whittaker's the better striker. Both guys got really solid cardio, and it's only 3 rounds. And we've seen Vettori try to clinch against the cage, try to slow his opponents down. I just think Whittaker is one of those guys that if Adesanya wasn't the champ right now, he would be that guy. Adesanya's the only guy he's lost to at middleweight. And Whittaker, so we don't have to pay minus 230. I think that's a little high against someone Vettori who is exceptionally good everywhere. We're going to go by decision. Whittaker's not much of a finisher. Vettori's got good durability. Let's get those odds down to minus 125. Because look, Marvin is someone who has hung around. He's fought the best of the best. He also fights smart. I just don't see him, A, beating Whittaker or finishing him. Haven't seen him really threaten that on anyone in quite some time against a top tier in the division. So for me, Whittaker by decision.
Yep. Really, really interesting 185-pound fight. I think it's flying under the radar, unfortunately, and I think that's because both of these guys have had their chances at a title fight and came up short. So when it's not really in the title picture, people tend to kind of overlook it a little bit, but it's a great, great fight, especially in that co-main event slot. Okay, let's stay in the 185-pound division with Alessio Di Chirico taking on Roman Kopylov. Di Chirico coming off of a 17-second knockout loss. That was 1 year ago. Kopylov still searching for his first win, though, in the UFC. He's 0-2. Even odds here, minus 110 on both sides. What do you think about this one?
To me, this is one of those fights where you could easily stay away from because you don't really have enough out of Kopylov to see what he's done. He hasn't won the UFC yet. And Di Chirico went from 3 decision losses in a row. Then he wins by head kick, and then he loses by head kick. Between the two, I think Kopylov just has more ways to win. He just hasn't made great decisions, and he has fought tough guys coming into this. Albert Duraev is a tough guy. The Carl Roberson fight, I just felt like he made a really bad mistake here. Chirico is someone that is not overly threatening anywhere other than on the. He is a good striker, but we've seen very open to getting hit. So for me, if you feel like you have to bet this fight because it's the main card and you want to sit there and throw some money down, I would go with Kopylov here. I just think he has more ways to win.
Yeah, I don't blame you, though. If you got to lean on Kopylov, but you don't trust his decision-making, that's one of those things where, like, if a guy has bad cardio or if a guy doesn't make the best decisions sometimes, it's hard to really wager money on them. But a little bit of a lean there on Kopylov. Okay, let's go to the 155-pound division, man. And Nasrat Haqparast, I was high on his potential. I think a lot of people were, but we've seen him now in the UFC. He's 9 fights in, so it's not like it's a small sample size. And he's only 5-4. I think he's better than a 5-4 record. And look, the 4 losses are to quality guys. You got Bobby Green, Dan Hooker, Drew Dober, Marcin Held. So he has fought good competition, but he's come up short in a lot of these fights. 5-4, again, his overall record. Taking on John Makdessi, who's quietly 4-1 in his last 5. And the reason it's quiet is because it's taken him a long time to get those 5 fights. Very inactive lately. What do you think of this fight with 2 guys who are pretty familiar with one another?
What confuses me about Nasrat Haqparast is, to your point, he was a very solid prospect coming into the UFC. He did well in his first few fights, but then once he got moved up to that competition, he was kind of exposed. And that was that the wrestling game just wasn't there, being put on his back. He's not a threat, but he's a striker. And he's going against someone in John Makdessi who's been around for quite some time. His last win against Ignacio Bahamondes was exceptional. This was a guy at Makdessi that I think we all kind of wrote off despite, winning those fights. For me, this is an interesting one. I think Makdessi as a dog is really quite interesting, because he's a good striker. Yeah. He doesn't really get hit all that much. He's smart. He makes the right decisions. And Haqparast just isn't there yet overall. So, but at the same time, though, both guys really don't get finished. So I'm going to play this one a little bit safer. I'm going to say this fight goes to a decision. But if I understand if people do want to take Makdessi as a dog, I also don't know how Haqparast bounces back after a couple of losses. So we shall see. But for me, I think this fight's going to be a stand-up fight. A little hesitancy in the beginning. Makdessi does not throw a ton of volume, so give me the fight to go the distance.
Yeah, I like that. Makdessi as a dog is pretty interesting. I mean, obviously, Nasrat is the favorite for a reason. I think he's obviously more in the peak of his career than Makdessi is. But when you look at this stylistically, Makdessi is a clever striker, and I think it's going to be a stand-up fight. And Haqparast, he makes mistakes. We've seen it before in his UFC career. Okay, let's drop down to the 145-pound division. A couple guys that we haven't seen a whole lot of. Haven't seen Gomes at all in the UFC yet. He's a -220 favorite. 25-year-old fighting under Fernand Lopez out there in France, taking on Jourdain Aerts, 27-year-old from Netherlands. Tell me about these guys, and what do you think of this line, -220 for Gomes?
I think -220 is a little strong for someone that we just haven't seen a whole lot of in the UFC, seen fight competition that's UFC caliber, and same thing with his opponent. However, if you saw on the screen, and the screen beat me to the punch with my stats, 71% finish rate, I believe, for Aerts, it said 63. So for me, this fight's not going the distance. You got a guy in Gomes who I believe his last 5 of 6 he won by finish. And I think 3 of 5 for his opponent were also by finish with his wins. So this fight, I think, is going to be a fun one with 2 guys that we don't know much about. We're going to get after it. So let's say this fight does not go the distance.
All right, rooting for a finish there in the featherweight division. Okay, let's stay in the featherweight division. Charles Jourdain taking on Nathaniel Wood. This is a great fight. I can't wait for this fight. Jourdain, we just saw him in another great fight against Shane Burgos. A lot of people actually thought Jourdain won that fight. It was very, very close. Taking on Nathaniel Wood, who came off of a 2-year layoff and looked very, very good against Charles Rosa. This is a tougher opponent here in Jourdain. Jourdain is -150, but Wood looked very good in London earlier this year. What do you think of this matchup?
Look, no disrespect to Nathaniel Wood's opponent, but a lot of people, when they fight Charles Rosa lately, look good. And Nathaniel Wood, the technicality was there. He was having his way. But this man, Charles Jourdain, just took things to a different level against a different level opponent in Shane Burgos. Now, look, we had Burgos as a best bet, so I am grateful for the judges. They went that way and they saw it that way. But we know what Charles Jourdain is capable of. His striking is exceptional. He's unpredictable. The cardio's there. We also saw against Lando the submission. We saw against Burgo it was threatening. If he could stay off his back, he's as dangerous as anybody. I am shocked the line is only -150. I think the odds makers are giving Nathaniel Wood's win over Rosa way too much credit here. Not saying that Wood can't win this fight, but I think Jourdain just showed us so much more. For Wood, I think he's got to grapple here, and I know he's a striker, but I just think between the two, in a different weight class, there's a big jump in competition from Charles Rosa to Air Jourdain. I like Charles Jourdain here. I thought he was going to be a minus 200. So a minus 150, let's go with the Canadian. I like him.
Dude, great breakdown. And I think that this is one of those situations where the line has been manipulated for two things that you brought up both. Jourdain losing to Shane Burgos, which I said he could have won that fight. And had he won that fight, I think this line is higher. Yeah. And Nathaniel Wood looking great against an opponent who, respectfully, you can look good against Charles Rosa, which Nathaniel Wood did. So I think that the line is inflated, or not, it's inflated on Nathaniel Wood's behalf because of how good he looked and the fact that Jourdain lost that fight that he very easily could have won. So I like your analysis there that the line should be higher just based on a couple of those little things. All right, let's pick one prelim to check out. The prelims you can watch at noon Eastern, also on ESPN+. You got Imavov versus Joaquin Buckley. Joaquin Buckley, always fun to watch, as is Nasruddin Imavov. I think this is going to be a very, very good fight. This could have easily been on the main card as well. You got 27-year-old taking on 28-year-old, high finish rate. What do you think about Imavov as minus 270 here against Buckley plus 220?
You know, it's funny. We look at this finish rate, and my bet is going to be a little bit different towards that. Now, Joaquin Buckley has surprised us in a couple of his last fights, but this man, Nasruddin Imavov, has just shown, improvement. We know he's a good striker. We saw him on the ground, and this is someone against Edmund Shabazian. When you and I were there live, we saw he fought through a little bit of adversity, he took some shots, but he was just so smart where he knew Shabazian tends to fade, he gasses towards the second, take him down, don't try to get the knockout, don't play it cute, get past the ego and get the win. But he's fighting someone, Joaquin Buckley, who has fought killers. You know, Hassan, he's got power for days. He was able to take the power, give it back. We've seen him just get better over time. And I think this is someone, in that fight, the takedown defense against Duraev was really surprising to me as well. For me, this fight's going over 1.5 rounds. 3 of the last 4 wins for each one of these guys were by decision. I think both guys are incredibly difficult to finish. You know, Buckley was finished by Kevin Holland. Since then, not even close. Imavov is someone who just is very smart, very crafty. He can get it done here. But the takedown defense of Buckley, I think there's going to be a lot of hesitancy in this first round. I think they're going to kind of see where they're at striking-wise, especially for Imavov. And if Buckley is landing those kicks to the legs early, which we saw Shabazi did to Imavov, I think then that becomes a clinch game, a wrestling match, which we love when it goes over 1.5, drains the clock. I do think Imavov wins this one, but we're going to go over 1.5 in this fight.
All right, over 1.5, which might surprise some people because you do have a high finishing rate between both of those guys. Okay, so that's our featured prelim, but we like to give Ian as much opportunity as possible to get his say and to get money out there on these prelims. So let's run through the entire prelim picks for you, Ian, which again, get your bets in early. Don't get them in at night because you will miss out. It starts at noon Eastern. Go ahead, Ian.
So let's start from the bottom. Egger, Perez. Look, Perez is a striker. Stephanie Egger, that last fight against Silva was pretty wild. We had Silva, but look, Egger gets his fight to the ground. She gets it done inside the distance at plus odds. I like Taha here. Quinones is taking this fight on short notice. Taha is a very good striker, tough fighter, has fought better competition. Saint Denis, as long as he doesn't leave that neck out there for a guillotine, I think this is somebody who is exceptional on the ground. If he makes smart decisions, he can be a problem in this division. He gets it done inside. We talked about Imavov and Buckley over 1.5. Farasiam is back in the UFC. Very short break outside of it. However, he's fighting someone in Figlak who I think it's going to be too much for him. I like him to get it done. I don't love those odds, though. And last but not least, Magomedov. Look, Stoltzfus looked good against Dwight Grant. However, this is a much different demon and beast he is fighting in Magomedov. Minus 270. I only put that on there because I wanted to pick a side, but I'll give you a sneak peek. He is going to be in our parlay.
Yeah, well, you teased up the parlay. Let's get to the parlay, man. And this is a fun card because you look at all of those odds on the prelims. Other than the main event, all of these odds are pretty close. You don't have anybody higher than about minus 270 other than the main event. So what are we doing with the parlay this week?
We're to go Magomedov, as I mentioned just moments ago, and in case you missed it, this is someone who's very well-rounded. You know, Stoltz has fought someone in Dwight Grant who is really a striker, no threat off his back. Magomedov is just a different demon. For those of you that don't know who he is, go watch some tape. He's a very exciting fighter. I'm going Imavov over Joaquin Buckley. I just think that he's unpredictable, and I think the striking will lead to the grappling. He's not someone in Duraev who just shoots in without throwing any strikes. I think it's going to be a problem for Buckley towards the later rounds. Saint Denis, we don't need to worry about the prop, just straight line. And same thing with Stephanie Egger. I think she bounces back. I think it's a really good matchup for her. We're going to get this at plus 256 on the parlay this week.
All right, so you're taking a handful of favorites, turn it into plus 256. Always a great time seeing which fights we go with on the Parker parlay. Let's get to the best bets, man. What are the best bets for the UFC Fight Night this weekend in Paris?
You know, Brett, this week I really had to dig deep with this one. You know, the odds were pretty interesting across the board. So look, I am going with Edgar and Perez not to go the distance at plus 140. I just think Edgar gets his fight to the ground and dominates pretty quickly. We are going to go back to Imavov and Buckley over 1.5. I just think the guys' durability, not getting finished. I think they're both very defensively sound. And if it does happen, I think it won't happen until later on. I am going with Charles Jourdain. I think minus 150 is a steal here. I do think some people may fall in love with Nathaniel Wood as a dog because of how good he looked against Rosa. But you got to look at level of competition. And Jourdain bouncing back off that round 1 and looking so good in rounds 2 and 3 against Burgos. For me, Jourdain's the answer. Robert Whittaker by decision. I don't see where Vettori wins this fight. And I also don't see Vettori getting finished. So Whittaker by decision minus 125. And last but not least, Ciryl Gane inside the distance. We've been pretty good at our main events. I love Tai Tuivasa. I'm a huge fan. I would have actually liked to have seen him fight someone else, not Ciryl Gane. I was hoping for maybe a Tom Aspinall situation, someone that would be willing to strike with him and not just necessarily go to the ground right away. Then again, Aspinall likes the ground, but Ciryl Gane inside the distance. And look, we're going with 5 plays this week. Let's get it done.
Yeah, I think before it's all said and done, you're going to see Tai Tuivasa against all those guys at the top of this heavyweight division. So we will maybe talk about Tom Aspinall versus Tai Tuivasa on another day. But for now, it's Tuivasa versus Gane. It's a tough matchup for Tuivasa, but he is on a hot streak. We'll see if he can get it done in Paris. You also got Robert Whittaker, the former champ, and Charles Jourdain, man. I like that pick at minus 150. For the reasons you gave, man, I think you maybe are getting it as a steal. So we will see. Nathaniel Wood did look good in his last fight. But that is it for UFC Best Bets this week. Thank you for watching all the plays, the parlay, the main card breakdown. Thanks for sticking with us, and we will see you again next week for UFC 279, another big card here in Las Vegas. Until then, goodbye.